to join me for the session. I'll just wait for a couple of minutes to allow people to join. Thanks for joining for everyone that's already joined. We're talking, I wouldn't necessarily call this a part two, but it's a follow up on to the last conversation we had about sexual harassment, particularly in the context of the workplace. I will be giving more time for people to join, and I'll just wait for a couple of minutes. Thank you. Okay, thanks for joining. I can see somebody's joined already on YouTube. See quite a number of people joining on Facebook. Thank you very much for joining. I really appreciate you. Thanks for your time. I just wait for like a minute or two and then we'll get started. Thank you again. Somebody again has joined. Thank you for joining. Thank you for your time. And particularly for those in countries where today is observed as a public holiday, thank you for using part of your public holiday to join. In some part of the world, while it's Easter Monday, it's not a public holiday, so people are at work, and that could also influence. Thanks for joining. Jokel Yedele Omotayo, thanks so much for joining. I really appreciate it. And thanks. She talked about thanking me for hosting part two. So obviously you were in part one. Thank you for doing that. I appreciate for coming back. Okay. So we just get started. For those that weren't able to join, you can still check on my Facebook page and on my YouTube the videos from the first session, which I did last week Sunday, where I talked generally about sexual harassment. Today I'm doing like a part two because I wanted to follow a procedural, use a procedural format to have a conversation. Last week I spoke generally, but this week I just wanted to follow sequentially. If sexual harassment happens, so what should happen next, and then what should happen next, and what should happen next. For those that saw the advert, I also said I will also be thinking about what we should. I'll be talking about what each of the three parties involved should do. One, the person that is accused of sexual harassment, what should he do? The person that is making the accusation, what should he or she do? And then, the person that is accused of sexual harassment, what should he or she do? The person that is making the accusation, what should he or she do? And the organization involved, either in the case of a school or an employer. Because last session I had quite a number of conversations where people were asking me to ask questions in the context of a school, or I own a gym, or I'm a member of a professional institute. So for example, professional association organizes conferences and there is sexual harassment on the venue of the conference. What should we do? Now, one of the things I said last week was the fact that everybody deserves justice. The person that comes with the allegation deserves justice. The person that was also accused deserves justice, and the system deserves justice. So that's what I'm going to be starting for. Thanks for joining. Boss me for joining. Thank you so much for every other person who has joined. Okay, and now I'm going to start again by definition of sexual harassment. One of the feedback I got from last week was the fact that I defined rape extensively, but I did not define sexual harassment extensively. But I'll try to repeat. One, sexual harassment is not the same as rape. There is a definition of rape. There's a definition of sexual harassment. In most part of the world, rape is defined as a form of penetration. The old definitions of rape had always emphasized vaginal penetration, but in recent definitions, including definition of states like Lagos State, has claimed that the penetration could be through any part of the body. Therefore, not making it only about a male-female situation again. So now, with the laws in Nigeria, Lagos State, and some very progressive states, we now have occasions for rape that can be proved against any gender. Now, so that's rape. So I'm not talking about rape. I'm talking about sexual harassment. So what's sexual harassment? Sexual harassment is defined by various laws in Nigeria. You know, there was a time a former senator came on here and said that there's a need for us to even define what is sexual harassment in Nigeria. You know, and I was like, yeah, this is a senator. You should know we have laws on Senate on sexual harassment. The Violence Against Persons Act is a national law that defines sexual harassment. There are also state laws that define sexual harassment. Lagos State has a law, the FCT has a law, Ogun State has a law, Ekiti State has a law. And then we also have the National Industrial Court uh, guidance on sexual harassment. So I'm going to quote, I will be reading specifically. The Violence Against Persons Act says sexual harassment is unwanted conduct of a sexual nature or any conduct based on sex or gender that is persistent or serious and demeans, humiliates or creates a hostile or intimidating environment. It may be physical, verbal, or non-verbal. I'm going to emphasize a couple of words. It says, one, it must be unwanted conduct of sexual nature. It must be unwanted conduct. Number two, it must be based on sex or gender, and that it must be persistent or serious or demeans. Very, very important. Again, it says it must humiliate or create a hostile or intimidating work environment. I've emphasized those words for you to be very conscious of one thing. One is that the law in Nigeria says it must be unwanted. So when somebody does anything sexual to you, you must communicate you don't want it, right? It also says it must be based, it must be persistent or serious or demeaned. I need to emphasize that the law did not say all three should be the case. So you can't say, oh, it only happens once, but the law says it must be persistent. The law also says it may be serious. So it's persistent, serious, or demeans. So it doesn't say all three must be present. So somebody can do one single act that is serious and can count as sexual harassment. The court have actually decided that in Nigeria that a single incident can be enough to prove sexual because it is serious. And then it could be verbal or non-verbal. That's the Violence Against Persons Act. The criminal law of Lagos State actually says that sexual harassment is a criminal act. So in Lagos State, for example, if there's sexual harassment, somebody can go to jail for doing that. And specifically mentions two contexts. It says in employment or educational services. Very, very, very important. Again, in Lagos State, the law says unwelcome sexual advances or requests for sexual favors, right? Make me happy. Things like that. Now, if you remember the definition that we have in the Violence Against Persons Act, it says it must create an hostile or intimidating environment. When I was sharing the adverts for this program, I said I was going to mention the case between Senator Natasha Akpoti-Addo and also Senator Godswill Akpabio, and many people said I shouldn't do that, but hey, I'm doing that, right? If you notice the conversation that happened on the dates where there was a problem over change of seats, one of the things that Senator Duaga said openly on the floor of the Congress is that you can't intimidate me. I am not afraid of you. Now, many people did not understand the importance of saying that. That statement shows that the conduct of the Senate president had created an intimidating or hostile environment. And so that's why she had to. And I keep telling people that people assume this person does not understand the law. This person openly said, I am not afraid of you. That statement was to talk to VAP, the Violence Against Persons Act, to say, you are making me afraid, but I am not afraid of you. But the Senate president, who is also a lawyer, that I felt she understand the law, she clearly responded and said, I'm not trying to intimidate you, because she had specifically mentioned something that is enough to qualify as sexual harassment according to the Violence Against Persons Act in Nigeria. And that's why she deliberately said that statement. I am not afraid of you. Now, that's very, very important when you're dealing with sexual harassment, because the person may not have taken any act, but the person feels afraid or harassed. Now, the National Industrial Court now says sexual harassment allegations can also happen in various contexts. But thanks for joining, Mr. Soji Adeola. Thanks, Dr. Mrs. Shoyinka. Thank you very much. Barrister Ejishi, thank you for joining again. I really appreciate. Married Matters, thanks. Verpal, thanks. And Sigma, thanks for joining. Okay, so it's important for that person who is claiming sexual harassment to be able to prove certain things. So the National Industrial Court now says there are 4 types of sexual harassment in Nigeria. 4 types. Number 1 is physical. He touched me, he kissed me, he hugged me, she hugged me, she did this, he did this. Physical. Secondly, the law says, the National Industrial Act, the National Industrial Court procedure says it can be verbal. He's toasted me, you know, and the law says it can be a sexual favor. Make me happy, right? It can be verbal. Number 3, the law also says it can be non-verbal. So he didn't say anything and he didn't touch me, but he looked at me in such a way that I felt he has undressed me. Yes, Mr. Ejiti, the law, there's a decided case where the judge held the National Industrial Court that a single incident can be classed as sexual harassment because the law says, 1, it may be persistent, 2, it may be serious, or it may demean. So a single incident that is serious can be sexual harassment. A single incident that demeans can be sexual harassment. So the law now says in Nigeria, a non-verbals can also be sexual harassment. So in this case, just he looked at me, staring at a lady. According to the law of about 5-6 states in the US, that is now applicable in many parts of Nigeria because Nigerian law says non-verbal could be sexual harassment. So when you stare at a lady like this, and you, like a woman said on TV, that a man stared at her and she felt that the man has used his eyes to undress her, that's a sexual harassment. Right? So you don't need to touch, you don't need to speak, your staring could be sexual harassment. And finally, the law says that it's what they call quid pro sexual harassment. That's do me, I do you. So if you agree to my proposal, you get a promotion. If you agree to my proposal, you get the job. Those are quid pro sexual harassment. So I've described those 4 things. Again, I'm going to remind you those 4 things because they are very important. 1, it could be physical. I touched, he touched, she touched, they touched, whatever. Could be physical. Number 2, it could be verbal. I said something, you said something, could be sexual harassment. Number 3, it could be non-verbal. I stared, I looked, you passed, I sneezed, or I did my face in a particular way. It could be sexual harassment. And finally, it could be quid pro quo. There's a research I saw, and they surveyed some employees and said that what percentage of employees knows that jokes can be sexual harassment. So jokes could be sexual harassment, right? Just a joke. You say it's just a joke. No. If it's unwanted, it could be sexual harassment. Unwanted sexual advances. The person doesn't want sexual innuendos. Proverbs could be sexual harassment. Sexually suggestive comments. Unwelcome touching. Right? You touch somebody that didn't welcome it. I mentioned the case of AGK versus Microsoft in Nigeria, where the man was fined 15 million naira for touching the lady's waist. Sharing sexual content. So in this case, you have a graphic on your phone, you broadcast it, right? That could be sexual harassment. And then certain things about what they call culturally acceptable things. So I'm a Yoruba person from Southwest Nigeria. The things we say, omo to fine, omo to shon, omo eda be take away, you look take away, you look like so. You know, those things we say could be sexual harassment. Omo to set, figure 8 could be sexual harassment. Yes, I know you remember a musician sang about it. Could be sexual harassment. It's also important for me to mention that so Mr. Adiola is asking and Mr. Ejiti is asking that how do you prove non-verbal sexual harassment? You remember, the onus is the person to prove it. So in this case, every time I pass in front of him, he looks at me in such a way that he's staring at me. And the staring is suggestive, or he starts to lick his tongues when he sees me. The judge is not a spirit, so the judge knows what that means. That's a suggestive. So if you can prove it, if there's a video, if there's somebody can corroborate it, like in the case of that lady that had only one evidence, one person to do that. So if you say something to someone and it's sexually suggestive, it could be sexual harassment. So sexual harassment could be what you committed against one person. Please note, and this is very, very important. There was a case I decided like 4 weeks ago in Canada, in Ontario, Canada. This person was talking to some people in a room and somebody overheard him. and then the person went to report sexual harassment, and it was agreed to be sexual harassment. So let's assume I'm talking to my dear friend Mr. Ejiti about a babe or about a guy, and I say that person is set, and somebody passes by and hears, right, and it's about the person's gender, the person can go and sue me for sexual harassment. Remember, I was talking to my friend Mr. Funsho Ejiti. It was somebody that walked past and heard. The person can sue you for sexual harassment. It's also possible that somebody that was absent but heard later that you said it could also sue you for sexual harassment. There was this other case in Canada where the person was in a meeting. So they started a meeting and said they should do, yes, Mrs. Fahimi said, you scratch somebody's palm after a handshake is also sexual harassment. Remember, it's non-verbal, right? Thanks, very, very good example to share there. Now, this person was in a meeting, so they started a meeting in the office, and then, yes, Mr. Akola says either two seemingly harmless remarks. That's just a fact. Now, so this guy was in a meeting. It was actually in an office situation. So they were new staff, and then they told them to introduce themselves. So this guy said they were to do two truths and a lie, or whatever they call it, two truths and a lie. And the guy said part of the truth about him is that he likes to have sex with Asian women. In that room, there was no Asian woman. The women there were Caucasian women. There were black women. There was no Asian woman. But the woman in that room went to report him for sexual harassment, that he harassed somebody of their gender. And the guy was sacked. And then the guy went to court to argue that that's not sexual harassment. And the court agreed that because women heard your comment, why you are not talking to that set, because he specifically said Asian women, that you guys are not Asian. And the law says no. The fact that you are not Asian does not mean it's not sexual harassment. Yes, my dear friend says, Mr. Oku said this is getting more complex. So Mr. Agisi asks, will it not be hearsay if a third party can claim a passive comment? It's not hearsay because there were people present when you were saying it, right? So it's not, for him it is hearsay, but he will be relying on the testimony of the person you said it to. So a husband and wife were talking about a lady and somebody hears in passing. Of course, the person will be relying on the evidence of that. And some third-party evidence can be corroborated in court and acceptable. So we have set a framework. What is sexual harassment? All of us now understand what is sexual harassment. So let's now talk about it. Okay, let's go procedurally. And that's what I intend to do today. Okay, so there is a case of sexual harassment. So what should you do? Step after. Step one is, okay, so somebody said something wrong or sexually inappropriate to you. That's the first step. That's the first incident. What should you do next? Second step is, you must immediately show your disapproval. Remember, the law says it's unwanted sexual advances. So you must show your disapproval to what the person did. So your boss touches your hair, or your boss touch your back or touch your hair. Don't just laugh and say, yeah, Oga, leave me, okay, I don't like this. No. You must express disapproval, right? You must openly express disapproval. Number two, once that happens, document the experience. Write it down. And number three, share that experience with a third party. Even if it's a text message, just send a text to your mom, to your auntie, to your brother, to your husband, to your spouse, to your wife, to your uncle, to your auntie, and say, today at work, my boss touched my waist and I didn't like it. I told him not to try it again. I just want you to know. Call that your auntie and ensure that your auntie responds to that SMS message. Why is that important? Because case law has shown that text message is sufficient to prove harassment happened. So don't call someone to say my boss. No. You can call, but make sure you send a text message and ensure the person responds to your text message. So this is just an incident. I've described what you should do to an incident. Then it happens the second time. Remember, you are conscious the law says it should be serious, it should be persistent. So if after the first time you rush to court, you may fail to prove that it is persistent, or the court may agree that it is not serious. So if it happens again, now I am not saying wait for it to happen a second time. No, that's not what I'm saying. What I'm just saying, at that instant, just document and hope or believe that it doesn't happen again. Now, if it happens again, repeat the same process. Show your displeasure, document what happened, send a text to someone, and then take a decision. The decision you need to take, that's stage 3, is what are the decisions I want to take? You must ask yourself what you want. Generally, based on my own experience, I think people just want 5 things. And they don't need to want all the 5, but one of the 5. Number 1 is, for most people, their biggest request is they want to stop the harassment. They don't want the harassment to continue. That's what many people want. Number 2, some people want to ensure that the person does not threaten me because I refuse his or advances, right? So they don't want retaliation. Number 3, some people want the system to separate them from the harasser, right? They want maybe a transfer or something like that. Some people want to lay a groundwork for going to court, and then some people want justice. Now, you must ask yourself which of these is your primary need. Now, if you just want to stop the harassment, the way you go about it will be different than if you want to go to court, right? So you must ask yourself, what do you want after this second incident? Another decision you need to take, that who do you want to get involved at this stage? So then take the next steps based on your decision. If you just want to stop the harassment, then confront the harasser. Walk up to him and tell him you have been doing this. You may choose to record that conversation. You may choose, which is very helpful, except you're a staff of Federal University of Oye-Ekiti, where a woman recorded a conversation of a sexual harassment, and the council, led by a senator of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, the chairman of the council is a senator, said, we know this is sexual harassment. We heard the video, the recording, that is sexual harassment. But because you did not take permission from the man before you recorded him, we refuse to accept the evidence. Can you believe that? A senator sat down in the council of a university and heard evidence and said the woman should have taken permission from the harasser before he recorded him. Who does that? So it's important for you to ask yourself that question when you are going to confront the person. Do I want to record? Don't I want to record? Confront your oppressor. That's one thing you may want to do. Number 2 is report to another person that can put pressure on the person. So the person may have a mentor, the person may have a supervisor, you may have a pastor in your church, you may have your spouse may know the person, and you may tell your spouse, this is what this person, come and help me talk to him. I remember when I used to be a lecturer, I've had female students walk up to me to help me talk to lecturers that were harassing them, right? And I say this, at that time there was no law against sexual harassment in Nigerian higher education institution, so there was no case of supporting the person. It was just a question. In fact, I remember in particular, I had to go and tell the person, hey, I mean, this lady has brought this thing to my attention. I think you just need to change and do that. And the lady did a course in year 2. She failed it in year 2. She failed it in year 3. In year 4, she went for industrial attachment, and the man allegedly told her that she would fail in her final year. So the lady came to meet me first semester in her final year, that the man has threatened her again. I mean, she had failed twice, and she will fail. And if she fails now, that's why the lady is talking to me. The lady is going to have an extra year. So I walked straight to the man and I told him, hey, I mean, we're both the colleagues. It was actually my junior as an academy. And this is what happens in the 90s. So I walked up to him and I said, hey, somebody has brought this kid to me. I want you to stop it. And he stopped it. And the lady did the exam, passed, and graduated. So you can do that. Remember, if your goal is yours, I just don't want this man to keep harassing. If that's your goal, then use that method. However, if you want something more formal, and I know what Mr. Ejisi has said, that if you go formal, you may lose your job. That's the fact. So that's why I suggested try informal. Look for the person respects. In this case, he knows the person respects me. True, the person was my junior, so I could put pressure on him, and the person knows that if the lady ever failed, I can go and report him formally. I mean, so if confronting does not work for you, then go formal and take steps. What do I mean by going formal? Is you report to HR, or you go public. You take the Senator Natasha Akpoti-Uduaghan method. In this case, we didn't hear about sexual harassment, and then she went online and said that sexual harassment, and then went to report to HR. Now, if you think that's the strategy you want, because I mean, I had this conversation with some group of people that actually that's what I've seen people do these days, because they know the legal system could be slow, so they'll go public, as in report you on social media, on public media, and then go and use the formal system. You must ask yourself which one you think pays you the most. But please note, if you will report to HR, I am an HR professional. If you will report to HR, please beware of what is likely going to happen to you. Remember, I mentioned last week that according to the law in Nigeria and in most parts of the world, the employer has a duty of care to protect you against sexual harassment. Once you report the case to HR, please do the following thing. Don't tell HR verbally. Write it down. I have seen HR that will deny you told them. It must be written. Number 2, be brief and specific in the message. Not more than 3 paragraphs. Right? Be brief and specific. Number 3, if you want to send an email to HR to report it, copy somebody external to your organization, blank copy that person. Remember, if they want to go after you, they can delete that email from the server. So when you are sending that email to HR, blind copy your spouse, your family member, or if you have a lawyer friend, right? Because I've seen HR do some notable things. Please note, once you take the case to HR, HR will do certain things. Let me first say, and I'm confessing to you, if it is sexual harassment, HR is not your friend. I am an HR person. I sit on the council. I've sat on the council of the foremost HR professional institute. I've sat to admit people into the HR profession in Nigeria. 6 years on the council. When it comes to sexual harassment, HR is not your friend. HR is a friend of your employer. Remember, according to the law, your employer is not supposed to allow you to be sexually harassed, right? So once you complain of sexual harassment, HR sees 3 different people: your employer, you, and the harasser. And based on the quality of qualification of that HR, his allegiance is not to you. His first allegiance is to the employer. You are most unlucky if the harasser is also the employer, right? That is why in the case of Federal University of Oyo Ekiti, where the vice chancellor was accused of sexual harassment, the system sided with the vice chancellor. That's why in the case of Financial Reporting Council against Patricia, the system sided with Financial Reporting Council. That's why in the case of HDK versus Microsoft, the system supported the MD that was doing that. So the system typically supports the powerful person who is the harasser. So that's why the investigative personnel of the National Assembly will tell somebody that, yes, no, I must mention this. Very, very important. In Nigeria, based on case law. So what's case law? Decided cases. The manner the person reports sexual harassment does not matter. So that lawyer man who says the chairman of the investigative panel of the National Assembly rejecting Senator Natasha Akpoti-Uduaghan because it was not done in a proper way. In Nigeria case law, that was a flawed decision. I'm disappointed the person is a lawyer, because the law has said, case law has said, the way the person reports sexual harassment does not matter. Even if he comes to you and says, this person harassed me, don't tell anybody. The law says the report is final and complete. So arguing that she did not get somebody from her witness community, I mean, it's hogwash. It doesn't stand this test of case law. So when HR hears, HR must take action, right? Like I said, what should you report to HR? What was done, what was said, not more than 2 paragraphs. Was it sexual? Was it unwelcome? Did it involve an exchange? Who was involved? When did it happen and where? All of that must go into 2 paragraphs. If it's too long, tell ChatGPT to help you summarize it into 2 paragraphs, right? That. It's very, very, very important. Everything you write must not be more than 2 paragraphs. When you are reporting to HR, please don't provide any evidence. No, don't. So if you have a recording, if you have a video, don't do that yet. The report is just a report. What will HR do after they get the report? They will likely call you for an interview and then start an investigation. The law says they must interview you. The law says they must investigate. So you will be investigated. In the HR, and now let me speak about HR and the organization. It's important for you. Thanks, Dr. Adedeji. Yes, the first, second, and third allegiance to the employer. Very true. Thanks, Pastor Adegoke. Yes, I really like that. HR, in case of say, is not your friend. You just hit the nail on the head. Now, HR or the employer is supposed to obey the principles of fairness as they go through that. There's what they call procedural fairness. They must be impartial. You have a right to be represented. You have the opportunity to be heard. So that Senate committee set up to investigate the Senator Apoti Idua versus there. You invited the lawyer of Senator Akpabio, my dear friend Monday Oban's SAN, represented the man there. They also invited a witness, the chief whip. They invited the lawyer of the person that made the petition, and then they invited the petitioner in that Senator Akpabio's case, but did not invite Senator Natasha Akpoti-Idua. Anybody who understands procedural fairness knows that the person who is making the allegation was the president there. And that was why when the situation started, they asked a question, where is the person that, and that's why the man that made, clearly asked the question, the person that made the allegation is not here. Again, it's a disappointment that the chairman of that panel is a lawyer who understands procedural fairness. And please, let me say this. Many organizations have an assumption that because you're a lawyer, you understand justice. Please stop making lawyers chairmen of investigative panel on sexual harassment in your organization. They are some of the people that complicate things. And why do I say so? They bring in a lot of technicalities. And the person did not come early. And the person did not do that. Of course, as you can notice, that's what happened in this particular case, because on the basis of... So, what does procedural fairness say? There must be adequate notice. The person must be there. The person must have the reason, know the reason why he was invited. There must be a right to review. The person must be heard. So in this case, Senator Akpoti-Idua was not brought to come and answer the question or to come and defend what she said. That is not an investigative panel. That is a kangaroo arrangement that was put in place to create a semblance of investigation. A woman cannot complain of sexual harassment. You want to hear the case and the woman is absent. The woman is not absent because she doesn't want to come. You refuse to invite her. But you invited the person that wrote the petition on her behalf. So that's part of what you shouldn't do. Ensure that everybody was there. So I've spoken about the process. The 10th thing is I need to speak to the person that was accused. Remember, the purpose of this session is to ask that question. How do we get justice for everyone? The accused, the person that was violated, and all of that. So if you're accused of sexual harassment, you have three choices. You can deny it, you can accept it in parts, or you can accept it totally. So in this case, you actually like the guy. I mean, so in this case, the woman that did the sexual harassment, right? You actually like the guy, and you sent a sexually suggestive message to him or her. Or in this case, you broadcast something that was sexually graphic, and somebody accused you of sexual harassment. You can deny it. I didn't send the text message. You can say it. Oh, I sent a text message, but I didn't know it got to her because it was a broadcast. Or you can say, yeah, I made a mistake. So if you are accused of sexual harassment, rightfully or wrongfully, because we don't know, what should you do before the investigation? You will also be invited by HR. Please understand what you are accused of. What exactly are you accused of? Because what typically happens is that, please note, and I'm saying this, and you can cross-check from case law in Nigeria and in Canada and in the US. When big men, and specific to men, are accused of sexual harassment, they do not go to court. Or did you see Senator Akpabio at any of those hearings? They don't. Patricia versus Federal Reporting Council of Council, where Mr. Obaze was accused of sexual harassment, it did not show up in court. TGI case that I mentioned last week, the accuser did not show up in court. The case of the lady that resigned after 5 days at work in Ontario, Canada, the man did not show up in court. The widow that I mentioned that has 4 children that was sacked because she's informed the MD that she was getting married and he has shown interest in her, did not show up in court. So typically, those men don't come to court. So when they said they were doing investigation and they did not, and I did not see Senator Akpabio, I knew that's the pattern. Now, why those men don't come to court, I don't know. But I've told you 3 cases in Nigeria, 1 case in Canada, where the men, particularly powerful men, no, I mentioned 2 cases in Canada, 3 cases in Nigeria where the men did not show up in court. As a consistent pattern when powerful men are accused of sexual harassment. What they will now do is they will now rely on the lawyer of the employer to protect them. And you know what the National Industrial Court has done in the case of employment is to separate them and say, yes, we understand you can rely on your employer, but you were accused of something. And then they put a fine on the person and put a separate fine on the employer. That's what happens in AGK versus Microsoft. That's what happened in the case of Patricia versus Financial Reporting Council of Nigeria. So that's the style of National Industrial Court. You can't hide under the Senate. You must come and answer the question you were asked. So what were you accused of? If you were accused of sexual harassment, understand what did they mean by sexual harassment? Did they say you said something? My suggestion is before you go to any panel, talk to a lawyer. Let a lawyer help you. Then read your HR policy. What does your HR policy call sexual harassment? And then when you're invited, attend the investigation. Don't be quiet. You know, one of the most fabulous stories Nigerians males typically quote when it comes to sexual harassment is the story of Joseph and Potiphar's wife. You know, the most unfortunate thing about that story was that Joseph did not even offer any defense. Right? Joseph, we did not read that Joseph offered any defense. So if you are accused of sexual harassment, and in this case, Joseph was innocent. If you keep quiet, you may go to jail like Joseph went to jail. So you must appear before the panel. Please, if you go appear before the panel, don't go there to deny facts. There's a text message, you sent it, don't deny it. It's just ridiculous because you're going to put doubt in the mind of the judge that you are lying. So accept the fact. Oh, I sent a text message, but explain the context. Oh, in my culture, it's okay to call lady Orekelewa. Orekelewa does not mean, explain. I wrote some things recently in a group of men, and I didn't know this person that was replied to me, and I wanted to respond to the person, but because I didn't know his name, I now started by saying Alagba. And then I wrote my response. And then the person responded and said, I feel insulted that you called me Alagba. I was confused. Alagba means elderly person. So once I see that open in public ID, I called the person private. And I said, sir, I presumed you were a Yoruba person. And I don't know you. In Yoruba land, Alagba means somebody that is elderly or somebody to be respected. That's why I call you Alagba. He said he thought it was a way to make fun of an elderly person. I said no. I use Alagba because I don't know your name. I don't want to say Mr. Man or Mr. He said, okay, he gets it. Now, so I admitted that I called him Alagba, but I provided the context. So don't deny facts, but share your story. Right? Share your story at the end of the year. Yes, Mrs. Motaya Joke says maybe it wasn't Yoruba. Yes, in this case. So his assumption, he has me Alagba, so he felt it was an insult. So accept the fact, but tell your story. The last thing I want to say is that please offer support to the process. If you're accused of sexual harassment as a male or female, offer support to the process. So maybe, for example, you are the MD and you're like, this person is accusing me of sexual harassment, but this person is my personal assistant or this person is my secretary. Would you want me to advise HR whether she wants or he wants a transfer from my office? Right? Offer support to the process while you are being investigated. It helps your case, particularly if you are innocent. In a particular case, the man was accused of sexual harassment, and part of the evidence the lady brought was that the man keeps her. The lady was the man's secretary. So the lady accused the man of sexual harassment. And part of the evidence she brought was that while she was supposed to be closing at 5 o'clock, the man keeps her in the office till 10 o'clock because he wants to harass her. She never brought any evidence to show that was actually there was harassment going on, but there was evidence to show that it was keeping her in the office till 10 p.m. And the court accepted those evidences. Now, that man could go to court and tell the court, yes, okay, I understand, or in doing the investigation, I understand this is what I've been doing. Henceforth, I will allow her to close at 5 o'clock. However, due to the exigency of cases, if we need to wait behind, I am going to request that somebody, the security, will sit with her in her office. So show that you are concerned about ensuring the person gets justice, right? Don't sound antagonistic. Don't prove your righteousness and say, since I've been working since 1745, nobody has ever accused me of sexual harassment. You're already creating doubt. Actually, there is a model that is used to describe those behavior. It's part of what the judge is looking at as you defend yourself. Don't fall into that trap. I may be willing to share that. So, now, in this case, the accused has spoken at the investigation. The victim has also spoken there. Please note that investigative panel must have a decision. You know, people will say, you know, one thing I don't like about sexual harassment cases that he said. Yes, you must agree with one person. And remember, what does the law says? It's a balance of probability. So if we can see evidence, somebody said you touched her waist, brought an evidence that says you touched the waist of women, and you did not bring any evidence of any woman who said you don't touch the waist. In the balance of probability, you are doing it. So we do not believe, we believe the story of the victim, right? Or you sent a text message that was graphic. What the law says is that if an organization, maybe a school or an employer or a church, set up a panel of inquiry into sexual harassment, and you don't decide. So you say, we couldn't take a decision who was telling the truth between both sides. What the law says is that the employer has denied justice to the victim. Do you understand? So if your school or your church or your organization or your association investigates sexual harassment case and does not decide, they say we don't know which of them is telling the truth. The case law has said that action by the employer is actually a denial of justice to the person who made the allegation, and therefore the employer is more liable for the crime. So it's important. Now, so they have said you are right, you are not right. You can accept it or not. If you are the one that went to lodge the accusation, you can decide not to accept it. But please note, very, very important. Please note, and I must say this, very, very important. If you are exonerated, they said you are not guilty. The accuser he made a mistake. They say you're not guilty. Please, you have a responsibility to build your reputation and trust. Somebody has accused you for sexual harassment. Even though the panel will say you are not free, every other person will be looking with you like, you know, they say in Yoruba and they will looking at you with kora eyes that that's the man they accuse. So be careful around him or around her if it's a woman. So you must deliberately build trust and reputation. If you are the person that made the accusation, you must be very careful of retaliation. The system will likely work against you. It is unfortunate, but that's what happens. So if you are not an excellent performer, you may suddenly realize that you will not get good performance review because of that. Okay, so Dr. Dede is asking, how frequently does sexual harassment training be provided, and what makes training actually effective versus just checking the votes? Great question to ask. How frequently? My suggestion is that anytime you have a new employee that resumes, ensure there is sexual harassment training. So you have that there. And I think as part of leadership development, every year there must be some form of refresher round. It doesn't have to be a training. It could just be a material you send to all your workers and say, oh, in this case, these are the current issues. I mean, there was a place where I was working, and part of what I did was every year I let them know what were the major decided cases on sexual harassment on a yearly basis, because the law is expanding, right? So you want to be sure that your people would understand what does the law say now. So because something was not wrong last year and the court decision says it's now wrong, then you let your people know. The issue about checking the box is always a challenge, because sometimes organizations will use sexual harassment for the sake of sexual harassment. But the question is that you must be very careful. Oh Lord, it's worse for people who have to work in a sector that the opposite gender is dominant. So in this case, a male doctor who is gynecologist, or a female who is in sports. Yeah, I shared this statistics on my Facebook page. I don't know how many people saw it, where it says that over 50% of women who go to the gym, for example, experience sexual harassment. One of the very beautiful things in terms of this question, just again to respond to that question, is the fact that the law in the UK changed last year, and it says that sexual harassment responsibility of the employer is now risk based. What that means is that an employer should do a risk assessment of his organization. That's the expectation in the UK. You'll say, oh, okay, so where will sexual harassment take place the most? Right? So it will take place outside. Where is that? It will take place in the gym. It will take place after closing hours. Then you are now supposed to develop response, including training, including engineering solutions to those areas of risk you have identified. So that's the way I want to do that. So the person who was accused of sexual harassment could face retaliation. They could suspend you. I'm not talking about anybody. But you know, when they will suspend you, they will not say they are suspending you because of sexual harassment. They will look for another reason to suspend you. So if you're an average performer, certainly your supervisor will say you're not doing enough, right? So you will likely be suspended because the systems always wants to protect the other person. Okay. So you're not satisfied. You feel you've not gotten justice. You now want to escalate, right? You want to escalate your complaints. You have 5 choices in Nigeria and all over the world. Number 1, you can go to court. Number 2, you can go to Human Rights Commission. You can go to Human Rights Commission of the UK. They have a UK agency. You can go to Equal Employment Opportunity Commission of the US. They have jurisdiction over sexual harassment. You can go to the Human Rights Commission of Australia. They have jurisdiction over sexual harassment. In Canada, you can report to the Human Rights Council of the government of the province, as the case may be. So Human Rights Commission is another one. Number 3, you can go to agencies of the state. So in Lagos State, for example, Lagos State has a very excellent sexual harassment protection system. So you can report to this there. You can report to professional associations. I personally was a bit surprised the silence of the Nigerian Nigerian Bar Association about the allegations of sexual harassment. Why am I saying so? The lady who made the allegation is a lawyer. The person she accused is also a lawyer. I expected the Nigerian Bar Association to step in because the Nigerian Bar Association under Olumide Pata developed a sexual harassment policy. And so they had a reason to be part of it. It was more shocking that the chief whip that went about insulting everybody on this matter is also a lawyer. So the silence of the Nigerian Bar Association is suspect, in my opinion. So professional. So if you're an HR person, your HR manager harasses you, you can report them to the HR professional institute it belongs to, because those things are there. Of course, you can go to the media. And you know, in Nigeria, there are TV stations really ready to listen to your story. Actually, your story may go faster on social media than going to court. So if you decide you want to go to court, you can decide to go to a high court of your state, or the federal court, depending on the jurisdiction of the state. I would recommend that you should go to the National Industrial Court if it's a workplace related issue. So if you're an employee, please go to National Industrial Court. You will get justice quicker, faster there. If you're not an employee, but it happened in an employment situation. So, for example, in the case of Senator Natasha Akpoti-Uduaghan, she's not an employee of the National Assembly, but the National Assembly is her workplace. Therefore, she can go to the National Industrial Court. You are a customer, you went to supply goods and somebody sexually harasses you, go to National Industrial Court, because he has defined that your workplace is where you work and where you carry out other official activities. Your boss harasses you, you went on a training, and you were lodged in the same hotel. You can go to the National Industrial Court, though it didn't happen on the premises. You went for a conference with a colleague, and the colleague, you were sponsored by your employer. You can go to court, National Industrial Court, based on that. The law says they have jurisdiction over sexual harassment cases. They have jurisdiction over employee issues. So if you're an employee, it works. It also says workplace. So even if you are not an employee, but that place is a place where you work, you can go there. But remember, if you want to go to court, there are a couple of things that may be a challenge. It costs money. You need a lawyer, right? You need a lawyer to represent you. And of course, there is also the public nature of that. So, and when you go to court, remember the onus is on you to prove the sexual allegations, sexual harassment, and all of that. So, what should you do if you want to reduce costs? You can get an NGO to represent you. In the Federal Reporting Council of Nigeria case that I cited, it was an NGO that represented her, so she didn't pay any money. You can ask government agencies to represent you. So in the case of Lagos State, they have an agency that deals with sexual issues of this nature. They can bring up your case and present it in court on your behalf. You can do a contingent payment for lawyers. In this case, you negotiate with the lawyer. I don't have any money, but I believe I have a good case. If you win, we share it 50-50, 70-50. You can go to Legal Aid Council. Legal Aid Council is a public agency in Nigeria that can take up cases. That's if worse comes to shove, because they may spoil the case for you. If you remember the case of the man that was accused of murder recently, and there is how the Legal Aid Council handled it. So I'm going to spend the next 10-15 minutes talking specifically about the Senator Natasha Akpoti-Uduaghan versus Senator Akpabio case. Please note, this is not legal advice to either of them. Secondly, this is not a comment on the case in court. The lawyers of Senator Akpoti-Uduaghan has openly said the case is not in court, so I'm not making a comment on what is in court that will be considered to be short sub judice. Thirdly, I am not siding anyone. Somebody said, you're a pastor, you don't want to take side with anyone. And I'm like, I'm not taking side. I'm only speaking as a child. I mean, so if Senator Natasha Akpoti-Uduaghan, if I was the Director General of the National Assembly and I was asked to advise on the case, what would I have said? That's what I'm doing. Somebody said, as a Christian, don't take side. I said, I don't know which Bible said I shouldn't take side. A woman was accused of adultery, caused in the very act. Jesus took side. I mean, he didn't keep quiet. I mean, I said, secondly, you also know that I'm interested in this subject. One of the things I consider to be very, very, very hypocritical is when people will tell you they believe in something, but when that thing happens to one person, they go quiet. So you hear people say, I don't believe in sexual harassment. I don't believe in people being sexually harassed. Okay, now, Senator Natasha Akpoti-Uduaghan has said somebody sexually harassed her. You now say you don't want to talk about it. The evidence of you believe that people should get justice when they are sexually harassed is that when someone is sexually harassed, then you should talk about it. You should intervene. You are not supporting any side. You're just doing what is right. And like I told somebody that what is unfortunate is that assuming Senator Natasha Akpoti-Uduaghan was your sister or your daughter, what would you do? So I'm not taking any side. But why am I going to talk about it? This is the most senior person in terms of hierarchy in Nigeria being accused of sexual harassment or making an accusation of sexual harassment. And it's very significant. This is a senator of the Federal Republic of Nigeria accusing the Norman 3 citizens. We should talk about it for that reason. Because whatever happens in that case will influence the other case. And I say this because I'm not predicting, I'm already telling you what happened. I told you not too long about that case, there will emerge a case of sexual harassment allegation in Federal University, Oye-Ekiti. A deputy director of works came out with evidence, voice recording of the vice chancellor propositioning to her, recorded. An investigative panel of inquiry was set up. But it was about the same time they were having those conversations in National Assembly. So the Senior Staff Association of that university, of which the woman was a member, I asked the Vice Chancellor to step aside so that the investigation can go on. But the Vice Chancellor said he would not step aside. And people said he would not step aside because the Senate President did not step aside. So I'm not making up the importance of why we should talk about it, because people are learning from it, right? And then the council eventually got the report and said because the woman did not take the permission of the vice chancellor for recording it, it cannot be taken as evidence, and they had the woman to apologize to the man. This is video, it was sent to me. I heard it with my ears. The council did not say the man didn't say so, but they said she did not take permission, and they asked the woman to go and apologize to the man. Of course, some of us started to write upon his social media, thanks to friends like Professor Chidi Odinkalu, the Minister for Education head, and the Vice Chancellor has been asked to go on vacation now. I mean, go on whatever they asked him to go, but he's no more the VC for now. There's someone there. But That's why people are learning. You know, there's what they call social learning, what you learn from others. So that technicality that chairman of the Senate committee used to throw away the woman's aggregation at National Assembly, is that not the same thing that another senator is doing? Please Google the name of the, I don't want to mention his name. The chairman of the council chairman of this national of the Federal University of Technology, Federal University of Yekiti, the chairman of council that said the woman should have asked for permission is a senator. I am not going to make any association, but there is something about these senators and things like this. They seem to always want to support one side. So the way I'm going to discuss it, because I need to round off now, my time is fast spent, is I am going to mention the things that goes in support of Senator Natasha Akpoti-Uduaghan. I'll mention the things that will likely work against her if she goes to court. I'll do the same for Senator Akpabio, and then the things that work again. And then think about what will likely happen if you decide to go to court. What will work in favor of Senator Akpoti-Uduaghan? The first thing that work in her favor is case law. Case law strongly supports the person making the accusation, even though there is no direct evidence. That's going to work a lot in her favor. A second thing that will work in her favor is the stance of sexual harassment that has now become trauma-informed justice. What that means, therefore, is that the person that is alleging sexual harassment was traumatized, and therefore her behavior cannot be used to prove or disprove the occurrence. I said I was going to do a video to respond to Olisa Agbakuva, SAN, who was asking Senator Akpoti-Uduaghan that her conduct the next day after the sexual harassment, where she was praising the Senate president, seems to be contradictory. Actually, with due respect to the senior advocate, their trauma-informed justice system says the client or the person that was abused will be inconsistent because of the trauma. So the inconsistency itself is evidence of trauma. But you know, Senator, Olisa Agbakuva, senior advocate of Nigeria, is a respected lawyer. But I think he didn't get that correctly, because that's what the law says at the end of. So case law works in our favor. I've mentioned that. Number two is the fact that gender works in our favor. So it's a woman alleging sexual harassment. Virtually all the cases of sexual harassment that have been won by anybody in Nigeria were by women. So that works in our favor. Our age works in our favor. Senator Ereti Kingwibe came on here and said there are 4 female senators. None of us has been, none of us has have experience of sexual harassment. There is data that shows that the age where most women experience sexual harassment is in the current age of Senator Akpabio. So our lawyer will present that in court in case you bring the other female senator to say, I was not harassed though. Say, yeah, but the data shows you will not be harassed. I mean, you have 60 something or you have 50 something. This is a 40 something year old. So the case law also suggests, and data and research shows that the younger person will face sexual harassment more than the older person. So that works in our favor. Power dynamics works in our favor. I mean, generally, it's the more senior person that sexually harasses no person. So that's working out. The sustained attacks on her is going to work in her favor. Yeah. The fact that she was removed as the chairperson of the committee, the fact that her seat was changed, is sustained. Can you say sustained aggression? The fact that the day she openly said she doesn't want the seat, the Senate president said, take her out. I mean, this is your peer. You're only the Senate president. They call you the first, and the first thing you are saying that get her out of here is going to work in our favor. Right? They were sustained there. One thing that people generally don't talk about is that nobody has denied the venue of the alleged incident. Everybody has said yes. Senator Akpabio was there. Everybody has said she was there with her husband. Everybody has said there were many people in the house. Everybody has said the Senate president took people around the house. So the incidents, location, timing, dates, everybody agrees on that. It's going to work in our favor, because it's not a case of, oh, he took me to a hotel. No. Everybody said, yeah, he took you there. that the two of you were present there. Now, what is different here is that one, somebody said there are many people there. Another person says it couldn't have happened. And that's the most ridiculous witness in the whole case. That said the man could not have told her in the presence of her husband. And you're like, that's not what they call witnessing. You can't say what a man can say, because you are not the man's bodyguard walking with him up and down. So that's going to work in our favor. If he relies on a lot of expert witness, that will work a lot in our favor at the end of the day. And that was why when Dr. Obiozekwesili came, I knew these people knew what they were up to. Right. And they also got a lawyer. That woman that was a lawyer at that sitting has won most of the sexual harassment allegations in Nigeria. So she's the big boy of the game. She understands what happens in sexual harassment cases. Okay. One thing that will work in her favor is also the fact that Senator Akpabio has publicly insulted her before, talking about that this was not a nightclub. Of course, he apologized, but that is going to work in her favor. To show sustained aggression. Last week I talked about prior conduct as something you can present in court. Senator Kingwibe, when she had a clash with Senator Akpabio, had said that he doesn't treat her the way they treat others. So Senator Kingwibe's comments will work in her favor to show gender discrimination. Mrs. Newell, the NDDC lady, had accused Senator Akpabio of sexual harassment, actually claimed she slapped him. He never took her to court. That will work in favor of Senator Natasha. So what will work against her? One, there is no direct evidence. As at now, she may have it, but she refused to release it. And there are some people that say she should bring out the evidence. I'm like, it's not your place to ask somebody to you are not the judge. Evidence are presented to judge. You are not a judge. Why are you asking for evidence? So she may not have direct evidence. Number two, the quality of representation may be lacking. The Senate president can get all the lawyers in the world. Senator Olisa Agbakoba, that is now his lawyer, was the former president of the Nigerian Bar Association. So he can pay any lawyer, he may get very good lawyer. Three, people could allege there is a motive, right? She wants something, right? That's possible. The system will work against her. The system has suspended her. The system has said she should not come to national assembly. The system has withdrawn her security, right? You remember, and unfortunately, there was a story that her home was attacked last couple of days. So that's the system working. And then, of course, the legal system could be slow. So those things are not going to work for her. What works for Senator Akpabio? One, there may not be direct evidence. That's going to work. Because if Senator Natasha Akpoti-Dua relies on circumstantial evidence, that may work in favor of Senator Akpabio. The system will work to support Senator Akpabio. Yeah, that's already obvious, right? You can see that playing out. The state will support it. You heard the wife of the president, Senator Oluremi Tinubu, make a comment about this case and was going all around the place. This was a former senator that was also sexually harassed in the National Assembly. You remember that a senator said he was going to impregnate Mrs. Remi Tinubu on the floor of the Senate. And if you remember, I actually have this in record. Senator Remi Tinubu wrote a letter to the police reporting the allegation, wrote a letter to the APC national chairman, wrote a letter to the Senate, accused Senate President Saraki of conniving with the other person. Right. So that's another thing that works in favor of Senator Akpabio. Many people will be willing to testify, perhaps even lie on his behalf. You remember the senator from Ekiti State that lied that Senator Natasha Akpabio has accused Minister Fayemi of sexual harassment before, and Fayemi came out and said, no, she didn't accuse me. So senators will lie on his behalf. All of that is there. So what works against him? Everything that works in favor of Senator Akpabio works against him. The nature of the senators will likely work against him. One, the attitude of the investigative panel that decided to go technical on an issue that is not technical will not be in his interest. The chief whip, that man that has insulted everybody about this case, will work against him. In fact, I was telling my dear friend Monday Obani yesterday, I wrote somewhere. I said, "Is this the man you want to produce as witness?" Because a part two law student can handle the case of credibility of this witness, right? I mean, you don't need to be a senior advocate. You would take away all the credibility with the way he has conducted himself. Also, a staff of Senator Akpabio has allegedly accused Senator Natasha Akpoti-Adua of dressing seductively in the National Assembly. Now, I won't talk about that because that case in court. That's likely going to become important. So, what do I think Senator Natasha will likely do? She will likely go to court and throw multiple allegations: sexual harassment, human rights, gender discrimination, quid pro quo, poisoning environment, intimidation. She will throw all of that. If you go to national justice, she will throw everything. And the goal is that throw as many as possible, at least 3 will stick. That's what I think she will do. She will rely on a lot of inferral evidence. Oh, there's this senator, former female senator from Ekiti State, who was a former minority leader. I can't remember her name. She was on TV. She said something that was very casual but very, very important. A good lawyer will pick that up. She said, the Senate president is very jovial. He says a lot of things that can be used against him. She said so. A senator said so. A female senator said so. That could become very important. Then some of the arguments of some of the people that have actually come to defend Senator Akpabio will likely be brought in evidence, and then all of that. But what will the judge be looking for? We're looking for the credibility of the witnesses. Which of those witnesses are credible, point of law, corroborative, and then pressure from social media. Now, I'm saying all of this for us. Again, like I said, I'm not a judge. It's the judge that's going to take a decision. But why it's important for us to notice that this thing can also happen in our organization. I say this, and I'm not happy to say it, because I have a pastor who I respect, who has been a blessing to my life. Actually, I think I've had like 3 pastors. I mean, these are people I listen to almost on a weekly basis in the US. Exceptional men of God who have been phenomenal in their teaching ministry, that got embroiled in sexual harassment allegation. And one of the very, very unfortunate things is the way the church handled it is always the challenge. Actually, in one of the cases, I'm not going to mention the name of the pastor and the name of the church, the elders had to fire every other pastor that heard about the case but did not take action, because there's a sense in which people feel this sexual harassment thing is so far away. I mean, if you are a Christian and you read the Bible, you're going to see the incidences of sexual harassment in the Bible that you realize that even among spiritual people, it happened. There was a rape in Genesis. There was an accusation of sexual harassment in Genesis, first book of the Bible. So I can't count other incidences. If you say you run a school, you have a gym, and you have a sport person, one of the biggest fines that have been paid for sexual harassment was in the case of the gymnasts that were representing the US, where the doctor responsible for them was sexually harassing them. So if you're a doctor or you own a school and you have girls who come, or you have even ballet dancers, or you have young boys, or you are a parent, right? Or you have a child who has challenges with either any of the faculties, because in Nigeria, one of the most prone people to sexual harassment are people with disability. That's what the data says. All of us should be involved, because at the end of the day, it's an issue that we got to deal with. It's an issue we got to stop. We got to stop sexual harassment by doing the right thing. But it's also important for us to also be conscious of the fact that when it happens, what should we do? I'm going to end with this. If any other person has a question, please, you can type it. I'll be responding to the question now. This was in the Microsoft versus AGK case. AGK reported sexual harassment to the HR, and HR allegedly didn't do anything. So then reported to another person, and they didn't do anything. And the National Industrial Court came on and declared that the employer has a duty to investigate and respond to all sexual harassment allegations. So in Nigeria, if there's sexual harassment allegation, you have a responsibility to investigate and decide on it. You can't be quiet, you can't acquiesce or believe that, oh, people can do whatever they like. It's in your interest to know what to do before it happens. So you have a school. And think about it. Look at the number of cases of sexual harassment we have had in schools in Nigeria. And look at the way it was handled. Look at the way it was handled. Eventually, the schools get into trouble because of the way it was handled. So, on that note, I'll be closing, and I believe that I've been able to help everybody to understand how to respond to these issues. You are a parent, you have a house help who sexually harasses your daughter or your son. What should you do? That's what I've talked about today. You are a school head, you are the pastor of a church, you are a CEO, you are an entrepreneur. What should you do? Or your spouse was accused of sexual harassment. What should you do? Okay, Mr. Ejiti is asking, what is your view of victim on sexual seeking regrets in public? You see, think about it. It depends on the value system of the society. I'm sure we remember the case of the CNN CEO that was accused of sexual harassment, and it was all in the public domain. They didn't go to court, and he had to resign. So that's a case. The other case is also the question of, you remember the case of the former IFM CEO, the man that was Mr. Khan, the man that was supposed to become, that wanted to run to become the president of France. He was accused by worker in a hospital, socially, and the man could not run for the race again. So it depends on the situation. You know that in Nigeria, 3 or 4 House of Reps members were accused of sexual harassment in abroad, and nothing happened. Nigerians were like, nothing happened, and nothing happened to them. There was a video of a senator that was involved in a threesome sexual scene in Nigeria. Nothing happened. So in Nigeria, nothing will happen to the person. But one of the things that will likely happen is that they will likely affect the reputation of the person. So when people go to sue redress in the public, they will do it so that they can talk about the reputation there. So there's a question from Nadidiji that says, what impact has remote hybrid work had on workplace harassment issues? Has data shown any evidence, any difference? Quite honestly, I'm not aware of any difference. The only thing I just want to mention with respect to that is that there is a likelihood that there is going to be a reduction in physical sexual harassment just because of hybrid, there is distance. But that does not mean sextortion, sexting, and all of that will not still be happening. So the sexual harassment that of the physical nature might have reduced, but the one of a non-physical nature could have increased. But again, I don't have any data on that. So I'm going to stop on that note. I'll just occasionally throw a couple of snippets around the subject here and there for us to just think about what we should do when it happens. All of us have responsibilities to ensure that we do the right things when these things happen. Sexual harassment could be very damaging to the victims. Could also be damaging to the people that are falsely accused. You may never be able to recover from the damage, and like somebody had said, of course, you remember, for example, in the case of Andrew Cuomo, Cuomo was governor of New York State, and till date he denies all those sexual allegations, but he resigned because at the end of the day, the system, their response to it like that. Okay, there's a question from Owolabi Oreolu where it says, for a sexual harassment case that was happened between colleagues after close of business outside of the workplace and it didn't happen in the course of carrying out work duty, is it advisable to approach HR on a case like this? Yes, please, Owolabi Oreolu. Yes, it is advisable, and the reason is because the workplace is defined as where work is done. So it's not a case of just your office. He called it workplace, not office. So whether it's a factory, it's a hotel. In fact, I mentioned very often the Microsoft case. The Microsoft case happened in a hotel outside Nigeria. So, and that happened. Mr. Soji Adeola said there was a case of a director of a company who recently raped a staff What's your take on how the company handled the case? I didn't really see the company handle it, because the only thing I think I remember was that they did a press statement and then they went quiet. In some other places, that company will be by now be facing serious legal issues, wherein the person will have filed a civil case. And in a case of a rape, it's so clear that the person that was involved can rely on the Lagos State agency to file a criminal case and personally file a civil case. Please, one thing I didn't mention, and I want to quickly mention it, is I should be stopping in the next couple of minutes, is the fact that in a sexual harassment case, the victim may not go to court, but somebody associated with the victim can go to court. So a man was sexually harassed at work, his wife can go to court on his behalf. The parents can go to court. The relatives can go to court. So it doesn't have to be the person, the victim, because sometimes the victim is so traumatized that he cannot even stand up to talk in court. But please, let's all just be careful, and let's do the right thing. I want to please encourage, for those of us that are leaders in various organizations, let's not put ourselves in that situation where we are the harasser. For those that have been harassed, I sympathize and identify you. Please make sure you protect yourself and get justice the way you want. Remember those decisions I say you need to make. You should make them as you want. Thank you for your time. I really appreciate that you spend your Easter with me to talk about these issues. Thank you, and have a great evening. Bye bye, everyone, and have a great time in the night and tomorrow. Bye.